Psst, check out my Patreon.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another reboot episode, I guess. Today we have an episode about a mysterious rain cloud that overshadows Townsville and sends everyone into a spiraling depression. Okay, I'm not going to keep up that facade for the remainder of the review, otherwise you'd probably get sick and tired of hearing my voice by the end of it. But I will say that intro is an accurate representation of how I feel about the episode. This is also the final Bubbles episode of the entire series, by the way, so that already brings an end to 3 out of the 5 reboot episode types. Blossom had 1, Mojo had 2, and Bubbles had 1. I bet you'll never guess how many Buttercup has, but that's a discussion for another day. Let's dive into the final Bubbles episode of the entire Powerpuff reboot, Largo.
Glug. I'm so glad you could join us for tea, Mr. Dog. Oh, I'm sorry. Dr. Dog.
I hate you!
Yeesh, I said I was sorry.
Our episode begins with Bubbles hosting a simple little tea party with her favorite stuffed animals. Although as you can plainly see, her toys are clearly not enjoying themselves. I kid. That was actually Buttercup in the background, who's currently in an argument with Blossom over a space tow truck model figure that was recently damaged when she slammed the door wide open in making a dramatic entrance.
Hey, girls! What's crack-a-lackin'?
Okay, Bubbles, you can cool it with the outdated mid-2000s slang there. Seriously, nobody was saying this years before the reboot even aired. Why the hell was it felt necessary to make Bubbles say this now? So Buttercup's argument in all of this is that Blossom shouldn't touch her things so accidents like these don't happen, while Blossom defends herself by saying that she doesn't want the house to look like a pigsty, hence why she moved it behind the door in the first place. Her way of thinking was that putting it behind the door wouldn't be anyone's way, but Buttercup further retorts this by saying that Blossom knew Buttercup always made grand entrances by slamming the door open.
Buttercup in the house! Booyah! Dribbly bibbly. Hot dog! Cold cat.
Well, the good news is that this isn't really one-sided in the sense that both of them are technically wrong. Buttercup's dramatic entrances are not an excuse for her toy to be in the middle of the floor, especially when it poses a threat to somebody like the professor who could trip on it and hurt himself. And furthermore, she shouldn't be slamming the door open anyways because she could break it outright. Who even gives a shit if she makes a grand entrance? Nobody but her. That's who. So basically she's just demanding that everybody bow to her whims no matter what because she thinks the world revolves around her. It's just another way of inflating her ego, basically. That makes it pretty clear here that Buttercup is totally in the wrong. But what about Blossom's perspective? Well, I would say she's correct in the sense of moving the toy out of the way and keeping the house clean. However, why put the toy behind the door? Why not put the vehicle along with all of the other toys? I mean, there's gotta be a designated space for those things. Or just move it against the wall, not directly behind the door. I see no reason why she couldn't have done that. Like, why behind the door? That just doesn't make sense to me. Maybe there was some ill intention behind her doing that as a way of saying, this is what happens when you leave your toys out, which I could totally buy, and in that case, it does make Blossom a little guilty. Regardless of who you side with, clearly these two are experiencing some lack of communication, but the way that Buttercup is acting makes me want to side with Blossom a little bit more, if only because Blossom was being selfless and considering the risks that the toy was posing to the majority of the house. It's good etiquette to pick up after yourself and not leave a giant mess anyways, but I guess Buttercup was never taught that. This whole episode can basically be summed up as Bubbles getting caught up in between other people's messes because she quickly grows tired of being involved with this and goes to see the professor to ask for some advice. Unfortunately for her, she's too late because a mysterious rain cloud appears and causes him to become instantaneously depressed.
All you have to do is give up.
Huh. Now, where have I seen that before? She shrugs this off and immediately goes to find somebody else who can help, like Barry, or some random marine biologist lady that we've never seen before and will never see again. Or maybe even the mayor, who's laying on top of town hall questioning what the point of everything is.
Mrs. Rhonda, my favorite marine biologist. I need some advice.
Why, Bubbles, of course. Not.
Alright, Reboot, I'm calling you out. I see what this is. Good attempt at trying to get some brownie points for tossing in a quote-unquote positive female role model, except you failed miserably. Representation doesn't mean a goddamn thing if the representative doesn't do anything. Why not have Bubbles go to Miss Keene? You know, a teacher that she is established to know personally and learn very good lessons from. This woman is essentially idolized as a role model purely based off of the fact that she's a marine biologist. But you can't assume that all marine biologists are great role models. I'm not saying all marine biologists are terrible people, but as with any type of job, there are plenty of people that are good and plenty of people that are bad. There's plenty of corporate business owners that take full advantage of their employees, and there's other business owners that happen to treat their employees with equal respect. It's all a matter of the individual cases. If this woman is supposed to be a role model, we need to see what makes her a role model. You don't get credit for throwing in a character and saying she's a good role model because she's a marine biologist. We don't see her helping animals. We don't see her helping Bubbles. We have no reason to believe that she is a great person. That's all I'm saying. Ultimately, this is a very transparent attempt at appealing to a certain topic or issue, and you can see right through it. But hey, whatever. Something is clearly wrong here, and it is up to Bubbles to find out what. So she goes to the mayor and asks if he knows what's going on. But he's just as sad as everyone else is, so all he manages to contribute is pointing out the fact that there's a giant rain cloud in the sky that Bubbles somehow never noticed until it was pointed out to her. Bubbles, being the optimist that she is, sees this as an opportunity to get her sisters back together.
Hello? What's up, girlfriend?
Can you please not? Oh, needless to say, that phone call doesn't go anywhere, so she goes flying up into the clouds by herself to see if she can get to the bottom of this. Is this premise starting to sound familiar to anyone yet? Aye, well, keep watching. This is where Bubbles spots a lonely gray bear who's sitting all by himself in this giant cloudy room, and he introduces himself as Largo, a sad bear who's all doom and gloom with minimal drive to do anything at all.
My name's Largo, as in, go away, Largo. You're too sad.
Bubbles, being the caring soul that she is, questions him about why he's upset rather than demanding to have him stop the effects of his rain cloud as a way of showing him sympathy. Fasten those seatbelts, kiddos, because it's backstory time. Turns out Largo here wasn't always like this. In fact, he was actually one half of a magical cosmic bear who was living an ordinary life just like everyone else.
That's when I got struck by cosmic lightning. We were separated into two different bears. I'm Largo.
I'm Allegro!
That's right, this is an Allegro episode. In fact, Largo and Allegro are two halves of the same whole, which means this is the origin story for how Allegro came to be. Kind of. At the very least, I can say that the naming scheme of Largo and Allegro actually makes a lot of sense. In musical terms, the word allegro is used to describe something performed at a brisk tempo, while largo is used to indicate a much slower one, and the emotions that these characters portray are representative of those musical terms. A lot of music played with allegro tends to sound happier and more energetic. The opposite is true for Largo. That much I can say is a great fit for these characters, but I do have to wonder if this origin was always the plan for Allegro since day one, or if this was something that came up later on. As I said, this is the backstory for Allegro, and upon my initial viewing, I was hoping my questions regarding his character would be answered. And while this does explain where he came from, kind of, it still leaves many questions unanswered and even creates new ones, such as, what the heck is a cosmic lightning and how does it differ from regular lightning? What the heck is a cosmic bear? Living in the sky doesn't equate to something being considered cosmic, that's not what that word means. Why are a bunch of fantastical animals just living up in the clouds? In what way does that belong in the Powerpuff Girls universe? The cosmic bear never even gets a name to himself. He's that much of an afterthought that it makes me feel like there's no point in Allegro and Largo trying to merge back into him again, because they have more distinct personalities now. They ain't no Garnet, that's for sure. Why doesn't this original bear have a name? I see no reason not to give him one, but most importantly, above all of that, why the heck does Allegro turn into this blue teddy bear thing whenever he's defeated in season season 1? That question never gets acknowledged, and that's the biggest question I have been asking since the day I first reviewed Painbow. If this cosmic bear split into Allegro and Largo in these separate bear forms, then what the fuck is this blue thing and why doesn't Largo get one? Oh yeah, that's right, Largo is never revealed to have a tinier version underneath this bear guise, and in fact, Allegro never reveals his in this episode at all, so that blue teddy bear is a season 1 exclusive event that I'm guessing was retconned? And even with this whole cosmic bear explanation that really doesn't explain much of anything, what the hell was Largo's motive in bringing this rain cloud to Townsville now? Why did he feel the need to make everyone else depressed? Where the hell was he prior to these events taking place? Allegro has been around for a very long time. I understand that one could argue he just stayed in that cosmic house for a very long time until today because he was so full of malaise, but why does he desire to take it out on Townsville? Or is there the possibility that he doesn't know his rain cloud is affecting people? I mean, Allegro seemed to know what he was doing in Painbow, so is this something that these bears do know, or did Allegro just figure it out by possessing another town somewhere else off screen? But alas, if I keep asking millions of questions that I'll never get an answer to, we'll never progress with this review, so I think it's best I just move on now. Turns out that Largo and Allegro's differing personalities led to a falling out between the two some time ago because they couldn't see eye to eye, although hearing of this struggle gives Bubbles an idea. During this brainstorming of hers, she gets interrupted by a phone call from her sisters again, in which she learns that Buttercup believes Blossom is moving out, whereas Blossom is throwing all of Buttercup's belongings in the trash because she's actually forcing her out. Oh, and then the mayor's just like,
so we all just voted to blow up the town. After we take a sad nap, of course.
Panic mode ensues, at least until Bubbles decides to set her priorities straight and take care of the most important issue first. Bubbles is going to help both of her sisters and Largo work out their relationship problems. The safety of the city and the millions of citizens can wait.
Glug, 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 glug. Tea time! After all, you can't spell friendship without tea. Yes! Yes, you can! There's no tea in friendship.
Why do you have to correct people all the time?
Well, at least she's trying her best. Also, Blossom isn't really wrong for correcting Bubbles there. I mean, there definitely isn't a T in friendship, so it's not like her saying necessarily works. But that doesn't matter though, because what's important is that the final guest of their party is finally arriving.
Our last guest has arrived.
Let's party!
Wow, did they really use the Bright Lights Party Don't Stop sample? As if this wasn't already used enough in EDM as it is.
We don't need no sleep because the party don't stop. So put your hands on, put your hands on, put your hands on, put your hands on. We don't need no sleep because the party don't stop. So put your hands on me and turn me on, turn me up. We don't need no sleep because the party don't stop. So put your hands on me and turn me on, turn me up. We don't need no sleep because the party don't stop. So put your hands on me and turn me on, turn me up. We don't need no sleep because the party don't stop. So put your hands on me and turn me on, turn me up. We don't need no sleep because the party don't stop. Come on.
Alright, so not everyone's gonna have this perspective, I know, but as somebody who listens to a lot of EDM, I hear this vocal sample quite a lot in several of the songs that I listen to. So hearing it here in the PPG reboot is extremely off-putting, especially because this is just the same Allegro song we heard all the way back in the first season with slightly different mixing. Oh, and as you could guess, Allegro twerks because it's a part of his character. You can't have an Allegro episode without twerking. It's just not allowed. Also, was it just me, or does Allegro look really way off compared to how he did in season 1? I mean, most of the characters had tweaks made to them for season 2, so it's no surprise that he's drawn differently, but like, his face and body structure just seem so much more different.
It's party time! Oh, I can't. Nuh-uh. I'm not gonna sit here with that sad sack.
You know, regardless of all the other negative reasons as to why I dislike this character, I cannot deny that that little gag right there gave me something to like about him, albeit for a brief moment. but it was a brief moment that worked. Bubbles doesn't really give him a say in the matter though, and just ties him up with the same rope that Princess probably used in Super Sweet 6, and pretty soon she rushes into the kitchen because their imaginary crumpets are done. Also, during all of these events, there's a lot of tension that can be felt between Buttercup and Blossom, as well as Allegro and Largo. There's not really too much crossing in between them, so it feels like there's two separate conversations going on at once that just so happen to be taking place in the exact same location. Upon her return, she bears witness to the four of them going for each other's throats because they still haven't gotten over their ridiculous arguments with each other, infuriating Bubbles to a point where she outrages at all of them for acting this way and demands they hug each other immediately to put an end to this ridiculous tension. Bear in mind that these hugs she is demanding of them are not going to be sincere. This is like something that a parent would do to their kids when there's a sibling rivalry going on. It doesn't really make either individual feel any different, it's just kind of being forced to hug this person, and as soon as it's over, it goes right back to how it was.
It's good to be a cosmic bear again.
And yes, that's seriously it. The resolution to this whole episode is Bubbles screaming at them to hug. Not even a willing hug, mind you. It's not sincere. It's a mandatory, forced hug, which requires these characters to forgive each other even if it doesn't feel like they truly feel that way, thereby forcing the moral to come out. I don't actually believe that Buttercup and Blossom made up this easily. I don't actually believe that Largo and Allegro put aside their however many years of differences that they've had between them for this moment. It just isn't very believable. This of course also eliminates the rain cloud's depressing effects, and everyone in this city returns to normal, resulting in a rather happy ending in which everybody can continue to carry out the rest of their days safe and sound.
What was I thinking? I'm not bald. Oh, what a relief.
Well, except for the fact that the city's fucking destroyed. So I'm sure it's abundantly clear that Largo is essentially just Painbow 2, because several of the same events that happened in that episode happened again here, and I just... Alright, so as if the events of the episode weren't already terrible enough, the blatant plot armor problem is still here, even though Painbow released several years prior to this episode, and the reboot had the perfect opportunity to right this wrong and come up with some reason as to why the Powerpuff Girls are immune to the effects of this rainbow and rain cloud chemical X. It instead did it again. Bubbles is somehow not affected by the rain cloud, nor are Blossom and Buttercup, despite being outright in the rain just like everyone else is. Why? Well, the reboot does not explain this, nor does it even acknowledge it. The Powerpuff Girls are somehow invincible to the effects of these Cosmic Bears' powers, and the show just rolls with it. It's like the reboot knew this was a problem, and instead of fixing the damn thing, it swept it under the rug and pretended it never happened, which is never the proper way to go about solving a problem. Ignoring it doesn't make it go away. If anything, it's just hindering itself by ignoring the criticism, because it'll never improve as a show if it continues to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. Any rational critic would tell you that the fact that the girls are immune to the rainbow's effects is a flaw in the writing that doesn't make any sense, and the fact that the reboot decided to ignore this issue and just do it again tells me that it doesn't care about improving its stories. It doesn't care about being a better show, because if it did, it would have addressed this. It's one of the most common complaints that was made about the original episode. I don't really see how you missed that. But let's be real here. The show's already dead. There's no saving it now. It can't be changed, so it is what it is. Oh, another thing I absolutely love in a completely sarcastic way is the fact that Largo was made to parallel Allegro as an opposite, right? Well, the naming scheme of the episodes don't even line up. Largo isn't just the name of the bear, it's the name of the title. But last I checked, Painbow wasn't the name of the panda. So essentially, the naming, echo, foil, whatever you want to call it, doesn't work properly. And Largo, as a character, kinda sucks. I mean, he solely exists to be sad. That is his only character trait in all of this. He's a very flat guy overall. I don't know, man. Largo as an episode has way too many things going on. Between the conflict of Blossom and Buttercup, to the conflict between Allegro and Largo, to the conflict of the town citizens being sad, to the conflict that Bubbles faces in trying to manage all of this, it's a cluttered mess at the end of the day. And the reboot episodes that are like these usually happen to be some of the worst offenders when it comes to the writing department. The fact that the episode has so many other plots going on just makes it feel cramped and rushed and impossible to follow. What would have been better, in my opinion, if this episode was just focusing on Allegro versus Largo. Allegro comes in with his Painbow and his clouds, and Largo comes in with his rain clouds, and they're both fighting over the turf, which would be the city of Townsville. Both want to control the people, and they're fighting at each other, and the Powerpuff Girls have to stop them because they're causing a lot of emotional damage between the victims. I think there's a lot of potential with that idea, and it would have been cool to see that, especially if there was like the gray mixing with the color. There was a lot of animation potential there as well that just didn't end up happening. Very big missed opportunity. I would have loved to see that, but sadly that is not what we got. For the first and final Bubbles episode of season 3, it's extremely disappointing, especially when a good chunk of Bubbles' episodes were some of the best of season 2. At least Blossom's last episode did have some sort of crime fighting aspect to it, but this one's a pretty bad episode all things considered, especially with a moral as forced as this one. I mean, you can't make people forgive each other. That's not how human beings work. The fact that this reboot is ignorant enough to believe that Bubbles' screaming is the solution to the problem really shows how little self-awareness this show has. I get that it wants to promote the idea of forgiveness and letting go of petty arguments, but this is not how it's done. Not even close. The episode certainly could have found a better way to have these characters appreciate each other again. So, as a whole, this one's just a heaping pile of shit.